Yes.
We have a science 10 sheet instead of a science and ethics.
What? How many of you?
I have a science 10 sheet.
We must have gotten mixed up. Exchange. No, you got the right one. You got the wrong one. Although you like my science 10 sheet but more than your science 10 sheet, you want to keep it? Yep. RJ, just go. Get it going. I don't care what they said about you. I don't care. Okay, did I go over the class recordings last day? Oh, you still have one as well?
Yeah, we'll next time.
Once I get to a certain spot. Excellent. Did I go over class recordings the other day? Did I show you YouTube?
Yeah.
No, that was in Science 10.
Science 10. Okay. Some of you will find it so amazing that you will get it twice. Let's see if it works in here. I'm using a different browser, so let's go. And let's new private window. There we go. Okay. YouTube.com. You search for Ron Neufeld, and you'll find me. Live and latest. We should be going. Are we going? It is streaming. So we're not picking up quite yet. Streamed one day ago. Let's go. Popular. Latest live. Want to be able to show it, but I may not be able to, so let's go to, may not be showing up, so let's go to the live stream. Oh, that's why. That's why. There, we should be able to do it. Okay, finally streaming. Science and Ethics, September 11th, 2023. So if you miss class, I live stream the classes. They are just a picture of what's happening on the board, and it records my voice theoretically. Streaming. And that way, if you're not here, Science and Ethics, September 11th, 2023. So if you miss, that's going to get annoying really fast. That way, if you were sick and you're in your dorm or at home, if you're a day student, you can still attend class live. There's no excuses. Mostly, however, I know that many of you do other things in the school in two areas that should be banned, which is arts and athletics. I highly recommend yoga. It has no away games. ODP is pretty good, but you are going to use the fullness of every weekend. Other than that, try to avoid things like the musical or anything fun like that, because you'll end up having lots of time commitments and other people who will tell you that their courses are more important than mine, which is obviously not true. However, if you're in one of those things, I want to support you so you can at least see what notes were covered. Sometimes the microphone doesn't work that well, but at least you'll see what's on the board. So always when you miss a class, go back to that. And if you're like, Mr. Neufeld is, of course, really boring when you do it playback, you can choose the playback speed and make it go twice as fast. Now, the safety reason why you need to know this is that this is recording everything that goes in the classroom. My voice should be the loudest because I'm the closest to it. However, you ask a question, your voice may be on there as well. If it's not, that's actually kind of annoying. I'll try and repeat questions so that other people can hear them if they're playing it back. But there was a case in which I left the room, and then I came back, and some grade 12 chemistry students said, Mr. Neufeld, was the microphone on when you left? And I said yes, and they said, you should go back and erase the last 5 to 10 minutes of that. Someone had asked a personal question, and the class had all given them very personal advice that they did not want being broadcast on the internet, so we stopped it. I actually saved it, stopped it, erased it from online, cut off the last 5 minutes. I didn't listen to it, and then restarted again so at least people had it. So you should know you are being recorded. If that is actually a significant issue, I can turn the microphone off. It just makes it less useful if you're using it to review. They get like 2 views. It's not like it's thrilling things for people who are not in the class. So that now exists, and we have that. In addition, I asked you to put in your, is there anybody who hasn't put in their textbook number or finished filling out the sheets? Excellent. I'm going to quickly go through that now. In it, I believe, I ask you one question, and then the intention is someday in the class we have a bit of a slow day. Most people are away. I'll answer those questions. In my years of doing this, I've never done that because we always have something to do. So now I just quickly go through them now because I know everything. I can answer all your questions. First question, no questions. You have no questions at all. You should be graduated. The one philosophy thing like, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am is not actually a proof that other people think. You could be in a world of philosophical zombies. Philosophical zombies are not regular zombies. It's a artificial thought experiment and they were just called zombies before the whole movies. But a philosophical zombie is something where you put in input and you get output, and you can't tell whether or not that thing is thinking. A famous example to illustrate one point of this, imagine you had a person in a room and they had a giant book full of English phrases and responses to those phrases. And they speak no English, and you could pass in a little piece of paper, ask them a question, and they would run over to the book and they'd find that question, and then they would write out the response to that question, copying it exactly as it is there, and they'd slip the piece of paper back out. So they would have an answer to everything you asked them. Do they know what they're replying to? No, we've deliberately set it up. So that would be an example of a philosophical zombie, something that looks like it's intelligent and answering questions, but is not. Modern AI, what we call AI, is not true AI. They're statistical models. They know that if you have these things, these words next to each other all the time, then they're probably related, and it should use those words when it replies about this particular input. So it has no thinking going on. That's why it's so bad at math. It can do really simple math. If you ask it what 2 plus 2 is, it'll often say 4 because that's online somewhere. But if you ask it to multiply 3,247 by 492, it doesn't have a calculator. It'll get the end right, because often when those two end numbers are multiplied, it gives you that end number. It'll make up the middle and give you something that kind of makes sense at the beginning. But it's just going on what everybody else, they're giant plagiarism machines. And so they don't actually think. I think, therefore, I am is the process of groking, deeply knowing that you yourself are thinking. You are not just taking an input and putting it out, but because you know you think, you can at least know that you are. You still don't know if everybody else is. I mean, you could be a construct within some kind of matrix, and everybody around you is a form of AI that is just there as NPCs in this weird game that you started playing. And you don't know that's true, but it could be true. Although the fact that everybody else is an NPC just put there to annoy you explains a lot about the universe. It's not a bad hypothesis. But it's hard to know whether or not other people think. So we have to search. We start with every philosophy. By philosophy, if you get a PhD in any subject, it is a degree in philosophy. If you're a doctor, you have a degree in philosophy. If you have a PhD. If you are a physicist with a PhD, you have a degree in philosophy. Every field of knowledge is philosophy. Philosophy is the study of knowledge. And so at the highest degree, everything converges onto philosophy. Science is about one branch of that, and there's multiple branches. We're going to do ethics, we're going to do logic. And so we start off with assumptions in every one. Science has a ton of assumptions that are never proven. We assume that if we get more reliable results and we make predictions that we're discovering the truth. We don't know that we are. We know that it makes our results more useful, but it doesn't mean that they're actually true. Scientists will get upset about that. So, I think, therefore, I am is only useful if you want to know if you're thinking. What will happen in the future? Lunch. Should cloning be legal? Absolutely. Not only should cloning be legal, CRISPR's coming. How many of you have heard of CRISPR? Oh my God, you're in for a treat. When you get, CRISPR's been coming for a little while. How many of you have not heard of DNA? Excellent. DNA, of course, is, we like to call it a blueprint. It's not a blueprint. You don't see little blue drawings in there of what you're supposed to do. It's more like a recipe. Add this, then that, and then human being pops up. And do it in the right order. CRISPR allows us to take the instructions, find instructions, pull them out, and put new ones in. Before CRISPR, we had to rely on blind chance. So how many of you have not heard of boy or girl in the bubble disease? I say boy in the bubble because they had like a movie called that. One person hasn't heard. More people are now admitting they haven't. Okay, your immune system is damaged in such a way that you are going to die if you are exposed to any virus or bacteria. It just doesn't work. It takes one gene knockout to have that happen. And so now you're born without basically an immune system. You actually have a little bit, but not very much. So you have to live essentially in a sealed room in which all bacteria and viruses are killed before they enter. So all your air is filtered and then UV irradiated before it enters your room. Your parents can't touch you without like thoroughly washing and wearing PPE to protect you. If you want to go outside, they actually built like Earth space suits, and so you're literally in a bubble, and the air is filtered in and out, so at least you can go outside. There was a young man in France who said, I don't care, as soon as I turn 18 and I can make my own decisions, I'm going to come out of the bubble and live my life. I don't care if I die right away, I don't care if I get a virus, I can't live this way. So a bunch of scientists said, would you like to hear about our study? And what they were doing is they were taking genes that would cure it, because it's only one gene. One gene fixes this. They put the gene in the virus, and the hope was they take the virus, infect the human, gene goes in, human cured. They had 8 volunteers for the study, including this young person who had to get special permission because he was underage. And then he got the virus treatment and he went outside. He lived for 4 years before dying of leukemia. He didn't die of a disease that he caught. He died from the treatment. The treatment cured his boy in the bubble disease. Of the 8, 3 died of cancer. 5 are still living to this day and are completely cured of the disease. And they stopped the experiment because 3 dead out of 8 is too high. But that's because the virus goes into you randomly. And what it does then is it inserts mutations and increases your risk of cancer. And it increased it so high. CRISPR allows us to control where it goes in your body. So now we can avoid the genes that disrupting would cause cancer and do it deliberately. So you have blue eyes, you want brown, insert the genes for brown eyes. You can change your eye, you don't need contacts, change your eye color. You want to be taller, pull out the genes that make you short and put in genes that make you taller. You want to change anything genetic about you. That is what CRISPR can do. Theoretically, I could take my own genes, put them into a CRISPR delivery system, and just start implanting and replacing your genes so that so slowly over time, you would become me. That's better than cloning. Now you're all me, you're clones of me, but you weren't before. I can turn the world into me. And cloning for offspring is awesome. Right now, if you want to have a baby, you have to find someone else. At the very least to participate. Even if you're planning to raise it by yourself, you have to find someone else. You have to convince them to do an unspeakable act. And then, hopefully, you'll have a child. And that child is only 50% related to you. Half. That's such a low payoff. If I spend $1 and I only get 50% back, what kind of life is that? That's awful. If I could clone myself and have a clone baby, just get rid of my current children, one baby would replace 2. 50% each. Get a couple babies right there. And I know it's me. I know those are all good. I'm not diluted with some weird, spousal DNA. So, NA. No, the NA was for the textbook number, not for the questions. Where is your soul if you have one? It's difficult to answer a question of what is specifically true about it if it was, in fact, to exist, which we don't know, because we can't measure things if we don't know them. However, there's a very old experiment. They even made a movie based on this, where a person put someone who's about to die in a giant scale. And then when they measured the mass, and when they purported to have died, they got a little bit lighter. So there is actually the mass of a soul. I think it was a couple ounces. They were measuring in imperial freedom units at that point in time. Now that being said, no one's replicated the study. And when you die, things leak. So there's a high probability for error. But apparently it might have mass. There was a hand up. Not anymore. Is the death penalty an ethical... What? How could it not be made of matter? What's your question?
I said, what is your soul made of? Is everything made of matter?
Right.
Yeah.
So it would also have to be made of matter.
Isn't it theoretical? Your souls might just not exist, and it's just
Are your thoughts also made of matter?
stuff in your brain.
All we know at this point is that we haven't detected it. We're actually going to answer this question. Well, we're not. Well, we're going to answer it a little later on. I actually have an activity for whether or not you think you have a soul. Is the death penalty an ethical sentence? That's a good question. Moving on. There's only one democratic country in the world that has the death sentence as a sentence. Does anybody know where it is? Where's the country where they have the death sentence? Yeah, they're down in the freedom country below us. Yeah. Well, hold it. I said democratic. That's wrong. There are some other democratic countries. They usually cut it off with a certain standard of living as well. First world, second world, and third world don't mean what they often use in common parlance anyway. I've often heard it phrased as the only first world country. First world, second world refers to your position during the Cold War usually. So first world represented those who were with NATO. Second world referred to those who were opposite NATO. And third world refers to those who weren't taking a side. If gravity is ever proven false, not today, gravity. What would happen? There's a lovely podcast of this person talking, and she says, "Why did we ever invent gravity?" And the other person's like, "Ha ha, this is a funny joke." And she's like, "No, because life is so much harder with gravity. If we just hadn't invented it, we could still be flying around." And it was just, it was amazing, amazing. However, also she was really lucky. She didn't know anything about gravity beforehand. That was her perfect day to find out. Every day, there's roughly 10,000 people that find out something that you knew. That's calculated using average death rate, average birth date. There has to be a point in someone's life when they learn something. And when you find someone who doesn't know something but has learned it for the first time, you get to help them in that journey and discover this really cool thing, like Mentos and Coke. Or that British people don't say I read books, and they're British, and they have ERM, and I always thought they were saying I found out yesterday that they don't. It's how they write It's wild. Why is the sky blue? The sky is blue because it reflects the ocean. What's inside a black hole? We literally cannot know. Not that we don't know, we can't know. It's worse than that. Why do we play Minecraft? Because it's amazing. We like to make progress, and we like to see visible signs of our progress. That is a basic human need. When you have a toothache, all the pain is in your brain. There is no pain outside of your brain. You have a nerve ending, and that nerve ending sends a signal, and then you interpret that as pain. And there's a lot of ways to mess that up. If you meditate, you can lower the pain. If I give you a pill that's pure sugar, but I tell you it's a pain reliever, that will alleviate your pain. There's a lot of ways. You hear about this great new massage therapist who has all these skills, and you have back pain, and then they massage you. Your pain will go away, even if it does nothing for the actual pain. Your belief, the placebo effect, can interfere because it's all to do with the brain. Your brain determines how much pain you feel. Now, it is based on impulses, and there's a biological response to those impulses, because otherwise, if you just decided to not feel pain, you might actually break yourself and not know. So it's pretty standard, but pain is an interpretation, like smell. You may think certain things smell bad, but a dung beetle thinks they smell amazing. It's all in your head. Which leads us to the next one. If you think something smells, just say you're in a house meeting, someone lets one go, the smell's in your nose, and you think, man, I can almost taste that. In a way, you are literally tasting it. That's how smell works. A molecule that was once up someone else's butt comes in and literally attaches to receptors inside your nose, and they're sticking there. That's how you smell. It's a physical response. Yeah. When you smell someone next to you, you are tasting them. It's right in there. How many people should I let the train run over before hitting the button? You're going to be able to answer that. Yeah. Will AI end the human race? We don't have true AI yet. I don't even know if we ever will. Computer bros, programmers, always seem to really overestimate their ability to create true artificial intelligence. And the biologists are on the other side usually laughing at them because it's much more complicated. And the philosophers are trying to keep score. How life began. We know it began once.
Someone found a tree.
So what?
Someone thought a tree.
Someone thought a tree?
No, felled a tree.
Felled a tree?
Fell out of a tree.
Fell out of a tree.
Yeah.
And then life began?
They died, and then another species began.
Oh, that... There's a lot to unpack there. How I interpreted that question was, how did all life begin to begin with? Now, I do want to say, and this is kind of critical to the classroom, if I can get everybody's attention. We're going to have a lot of debate about things. You're going to say things. One of the points I'm going to make on the introduction is this is a spot for ideas. So we attack ideas, not people. If you find yourself getting a little heated, calm it down. I will also say I have very firm views sometimes, and I will just state them as if they're fact. If you don't believe they're fact, that is not my way of trying to convince you. You absolutely do not need to believe me. In fact, I will go further and say you should not believe anything I say without double checking it yourself. And that goes for every single teacher in this school. You need to double check. You need to think for yourself and actually figure out these things. Furthermore, if your mom tells you something or your dad, that they are always correct. I will never contradict your parents. If I say something silly like, I think chiropractic doesn't really work, and your parents are chiropractors, absolutely chiropractic is the best thing in the entire world. I have, in university and before, I have done divination with cards. I've also been a water witch, in which you go around with a spring steel rod or some willow tree bark, and you predict where water is. My hometown, I predicted where the water is in 4 wells. At the time I did it, I knew exactly that I could do that because I could feel it. I would hold literally like this. A piece of spring steel would go around the palm of my hand, come up, go down, and it would have this great curve. And when I walked over water, it would pull down. And I would say, dig a well there. And they did, and there was water. Now, it turns out, I'm pretty sure that in Black Creek, if you dig a well anywhere deep enough, you're going to find water. But there's something called idiopathic motor control, that if once your muscles get tired, they'll start to move without you being consciously aware of it. And that kind of explains a lot of those effects. So now in retrospect, I don't think I was actually doing any water witching. That being said, I thought I was pretty smart at the time, and I don't ever think that I've made a mistake. When I was very young, I grew up in a very religious household. We absolutely taught that the earth was only 6,000 years old and everything was specially created. So if your question of how did life begin, and I'm talking about the primordial soup and how biochemistry came together, and that's not your point of view, I'm totally fine, because I once believed maybe a similar thing, and I may not believe it now, but I've always thought I was smart and processing information intelligently. I could be wrong right now, and you could be right. Only evidence will show in the future. One thing we do know, however, biochemicals don't leave fossils, but our DNA code is able to be read by every piece of life on the planet, and it has built-in redundancy with 3 letters, but the first 2 letters are often sufficient, which tells us the DNA code used to be only 2 letters, and now it's 3, which shows us that it evolved. So we think, based on how RNA and DNA work, that the first life was some form of RNA. We know that biological molecules like RNA can self-assemble in outer space as well as on planets without the presence of other life. They just start to accumulate. And if there isn't other life to eat them, there's a lot of ways that those could accumulate. And if just one of them started replicating, you have evolution, and that's how life might have begun. But again, a lot of this is guesswork, and there's a number of people who have done little experiments to show this might work, that might work. So it began possibly in space. What was first, the chicken or the egg? Ooh, this is the line drawing problem. The line drawing problem is, let's say this is the North Pole, that's the circumference, here's Canada, the United States, and South America. Here's Europe. What's over here? That's Europe. It's probably like that. There's Australia. Excellent. We have a species. We have a species of northern gull that lives there. And there's another, not a different species, but slightly different in coloring, of gull that lives there. And they can interbreed. They're not different species, but geographically they're kind of isolated. There's another species that lives in Europe. They actually migrate back and forth, and they can interbreed, but again, slight differences. Slight difference, and you can go all the way around to here where there's slightly different results. Every single one of them can breed with each other. They're not different species. But if you take species of this gull and this gull, put them together in a room, soft music, chocolates, they go on a date, they cannot interbreed. The ends are different species, but there's no single point in the middle that is. So where do you say that it became a different species? And the answer is none of them. It's only when you have sufficient distance between them that you can say it's a living fossil record. And so, which came first, the chicken or the egg? There was no moment in which the egg was not the same species as the chicken. You could only answer it a number of generations later, and then say, oh, well, now it's different than its great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. Those are differences of time, but this is the same in difference in geography. Now, that being said, the answer is the egg. Because the egg came out and was slightly different, and it's the different one. Is there a white hole? As far as we know, no. Theoretically, they could exist in the same way that a black hole pulls in. There could be something that pushes out. If you can build that, it is theoretical, and it is not something that cannot be predicted by physics. Like physics says, yeah, sure, that can exist. You just need negative energy. If you can find a negative energy source, which seems like something that doesn't exist, but could, then you could use a black hole and a white hole, if you want to call it that, to bend space so that you could travel at light speed within the space, but the whole thing is traveling faster than space. So essentially, you can create a warp field with such a device. They've invented it on paper. We just haven't found that we actually have those things. Are cats liquid? They're a non-Newtonian solid. What is consciousness? Difficult. Consciousness is, I think, therefore I am, and you don't know if anybody else has it. Suppose a nuke went off, and oh my God. Do you push and you were carrying a toddler? Do you push your way through a crowd, accidentally pushing an old lady in front of a car and killing her? Or taking your time to not hurt anyone, having the baby die of radiation? I like this question because it has an easy answer. It's a nuke. You're all going to die. It doesn't matter. Why are humans the only creatures who have deities and faith? We don't actually know that's true. We've taught sign language to some other species, and they've answered us when we've asked. Now, there's simplistic concepts. We've asked a chimpanzee, where do you go when you die? And it says it goes into a warm, dark burrow where it can get all the food that it wants. Kind of sounds like a little version of heaven in a way. So we don't know that we are the only ones, and there's indications, just like ethics, that it might be in species. But we sure do a lot of it in great detail. Well, how does space keep expanding? Where does it go? Yeah, it's not just the space that's expanding. The actual stuff in the space is expanding too. So your atoms are getting bigger over time. So the space is expanding. And because the space is expanding, your atoms are expanding. So everything's expanding. But since it's space that is expanding, it's not expanding into anything. Because it itself is the thing, space is the thing that's expanding. It is expanding. If you were in a part of the universe and you traveled long enough in one direction, you would eventually arrive back where you started. Which you can't do because space is expanding faster than light speed. But let's just say you could. Then you'd eventually get back to where you started. So it's not going into anything because there is no end to it, even though it's finite. Yes?
Wait, so are atoms expanding because of
Yeah.
space expanding?
Because your atoms are in...
Because of us?
Yeah. Well, your atoms are expanding because your atoms take up space, and space itself is expanding.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes?
This is a little bit off topic, but it's impossible to achieve light speed, right?
Yes, absolutely impossible. Except for that engine I mentioned before. because it is impossible for matter to travel at light speed. But if you could create a way, space itself is expanding faster than light speed because it's not matter, so it can do that. So if you could make a field with positive and negative energy so that the space moved, then whatever was in that space would move with it. And then, but it's not moving within that space faster than light, but the space itself is moving faster than light in the space that surrounds it. I said space a lot there. I'm confusing myself. But that is a theoretical way that you could travel faster than light. As far as we know, the things we need to do that don't exist. So you just need to invent the opposite of a black hole, and we're set. Because if you can do that, I'm pretty sure you can trap a black hole. Okay. We are done. I've answered all of your questions. There'll now be a final exam next day, and then you were done the course. There we go. Science and ethics. So this is the handout you have. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do is have I would really recommend a 3-ring binder so that you can put in things. If you use a spiral notebooks, that's good. I do ask you to take handwritten notes. If you have an IEP that you have to use a computer, that's absolutely fine. We'll make arrangements. If you want to try something out, like you have one of those fancy iPads and you write your notes, just let me know. That might be okay too. The research has shown that typewritten notes are the worst kind of notes. They have the highest confidence, but the lowest recall ability. So you tend not to remember things you type. It is apparently easier for the information to go in your ears, out your fingers when you type without actually processing. But when you write, more interpretation has to happen. Ideally, you're also not taking verbatim notes. One of the things that happens when you have to write notes is you can't write as fast as the teacher is speaking, so you have to summarize as you go along. The process of summarization is actually where the learning occurs. If you can write down everything the teacher is saying word for word, that's actually the least effective notes you can take. You'll have the highest confidence in them, but the least memory. I didn't always think that in the early 2000s. I thought everybody should have a computer to take notes because if it's up in the cloud, you can't lose it. You can search for key terms. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, the research since then has shown me that I am thoroughly, just completely wrong. So if you're taking a first aid course and you want to remember this to save someone's life, bring a little notebook and write things down. If you're in a meeting, like a staff meeting run by Mr. Patel, type it up because you don't want to remember that on your deathbed. Just, you'll have it for later and then you can forget about it. But again, if you have an IEP because you need specifically to do things in a certain way, I will make arrangements. It's also, they've measured the distractors. Now they've measured this on college students, not on high school students, but it distracts you in certain percentage amounts. Depending on the study, it can range anywhere from 15 to 80% of how much you're distracted on when you use a computer, because you can flip to your email, you can play a game. The people around you, the effect is shown, are distracted about twice what you are, because the constant flickering of the screen and when things move around is more distracting than when you're in control of it. So it's also to help others. Ethics is essential for a good life well lived. You are now in a philosophy class, so we're going to be looking at a good life well lived. Everything that else you take will tell you about how to think a little bit. The reason I like ethics is because it questions and may provide answers to whether or not it's worthwhile. Science will tell you if you can, it doesn't really tell you if you should. That's not its job. It'll just tell you how effective the bombs will be, not whether or not you should bomb it. Contact information is on there. You can refer that later. If you want to come see me on a Tuesday or Thursday afternoon, that's best because I'm on duty. You're allowed to text me to make sure I'm in my office in case I'm running around the house at some point and you can't see me. All the boys have in Privet House have my texting number. If you want to take it down, I don't write it on the sheet because I don't want parents calling me. They're very irritating. But students are allowed to text me. If there is a couple international students, I don't use WhatsApp and they don't have a local number, so if they need to text me in the house, they Snapchat me. I'm Goofy on Snapchat. I don't use Snapchat other than for that messages. However, if you add me, please make sure your social media is locked down so I don't see the stuff I'm not supposed to see. 4 big ideas. We're going to examine the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. We're going to investigate different ways in thinking. Examine some questions which allow people to question their assumptions. And we're going to look at logic and reasoned arguments. The expectations, not a competition. A lot of these, if you're asking me the question, how many people can I run over until it's bad and I should switch the railway tracks? I can't tell you that. There is a right answer, but you have to arrive at it to know that it's the right answer. And it might be different for different people. It may not be different for different people. There might be a true right answer. In some cases, it might be really obvious, but we're going to have to figure that out. I have no idea how the gradebook works. So you do an assignment. I give you a proficiency. If you're new to the school, a proficiency is like a grade, except that it's not. Roughly how it corresponds to grades are on there. I put that into the mark book that Mr. Wardrop provides, and then it magically turns it into percentage. I find it difficult to predict exactly what it's going to be to the percent. I can go within a bit. But sometimes things you enter more recently count for slightly more than things you did a long time ago. Sometimes they count for more because of mysterious mean, median, and mode reasons that Mr. Wardrop has programmed into it that I don't fully understand. We are required to use it. And since I'm being recorded, I will say I love it. It's amazing. Proficiencies are the best things in the world, Mr. Wardrop, in case you're listening. But I can always show you what grades you have and how they're entered in. Missed learning, if you're away, I can do lots of things. I can put you on Saturday night prep. If you see me ahead of time, I can give you an extension. I can follow up and say you got to come see me for tutorial. There's a whole host of things that we can do. But at the end of the day, if you're not handing in your work, you're not going to get very far and you're not going to do very well. So that is the main focus of all of those things. Attend as many classes as you can. Attendance is proportional to your competency, so the more you attend, the more you are. So that means if you're going to be away a lot, you're going to have to make up for that. Don't just leave it off. Go look at the live stream. And right now, pick a study buddy in class who is not in the same sport and fine art as you. If you pick a study buddy who is also going to be at your game, then you're both missing the class. So you want someone you can exchange notes with. It says 30 to 60 minutes of work per night. That's an awful lot. For a grade 10 class, it should be about 20 minutes of homework per night. That must be a typo from Chem 12 or something. Don't know what I was thinking. 20 minutes per class per night is the provincial expected average for a grade 10 course. That obviously ebbs, and some nights you might have none. That's for a 5-day week. And some nights you might have double or triple that, depending on how things go in different courses. But that's expected. For grade 11 and 12 senior courses is where the 30 to 60 minutes per course comes in. They, of course, have a spare, so they have one less course. And then ask questions. Teach others in class. Teaching other people is the fastest way to learn something. And take copious notes. I've done a lot of answering of questions and maybe said some interesting things. Maybe not. And did a magic trick last day. And we did a little thing where we ran around, saw a train hit a bunch of your classmates. But one of the things that does come along, we will, all of this I'm assuming is brand new to you. We will do a fair number of notes. And if that is disturbing, that is part of what's in this class. So evaluate that in terms of whether or not you want to take this class. We will also show some media because we'll be talking about ethical questions. So I tend to, once every week or 2 weeks, we'll see something in class as well that we can ask ethical questions about. Any questions about the handout? Excellent. Would like to stop talking. Nope, stop it. Pause. I have to turn off the sound. Yeah, the Holocaust is a historical reality. True or false? Yeah. Like World War II, true or false?
Yeah, like, is that argued that it's not real?
Right next to them.
There are people who actively deny that it happened. David Irving is a famous U.S. Holocaust denier, and I'm ashamed to say I believe he's originally from Canada. And I have addressed a student in this class was doing a research project for something else. They found a webpage that actually just purported to show why it didn't happen. And we had to go through the piece of evidence because they were like, they just thought they found a website. There are people out there with different views of reality. It is cookie break, and then what is it? Advisors. I did. I haven't responded to it yet. It's on Mondays because that's when we have to tell everybody the information. We get it from the host parent meeting, which is also on Mondays. So if we delay it to like Wednesday or something, then it often doesn't do it. There is no live stream, but Elliot Shepard is the day student prefect, and he's hopefully sending out emails once we start today to give all the day students an update. It's still great if you can come because, of course, there's not a live. We can't live stream it.
There's a lot of things about my schedule that overlap anyway, so Monday might just have to be like a not at my dad's day. But yeah, it's
I mean, if you can be there, that's great. If not, that's understandable. If you can come for Tuesdays for Big Bros, that would be awesome. That's probably more important in many ways. Sure.
Washrooms.
Oh, if you go to reception, they're like this way and to the right, but reception can point them as well.
Okay.
They're like walking to reception, you go down the steps and to the right, and they're right there.
Okay. I wanted to ask, I don't really understand the, like, 9.
So alternative and complementary medicine is like homeopathy. Have you heard of that? Acupuncture.
Oh,
with
yeah,
needles.
yeah.
That'd be an example of alternative medicine.
Oh, okay, like more spiritual medicine?
Yeah, spiritual medicine it would be called, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, why not?
Okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.